Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is nobody that I know has ever been to a concert listening to classic music. And when I've gone, I've bought 3 different types of actual seat positions because from the same concert at the Disney place down in Los Angeles, that Frank Gehry designed, it's absolutely phenomenal. And yet, if you sit in the middle towards the front, it sounds one way. If you sit in the back, all to the left, it sounds a different way. If you sit up in the balcony, it sounds a different way. And each one of those experiences are necessary, and each one has, I think, a certain level of enjoyment. And for the reason being is that maybe you went to the concert and you didn't order the tickets in time, so you're stuck in that position. Does that mean you shouldn't enjoy the concert? No, because the music is being played by the same instruments. And the sound theoretically should be the same, but you're capturing it based on the bounce of what's happening in the actual room. It's the same. It's the same when you put together a system in your home.
Yeah. But there's something a little extra when you go see the concert live. I think the quality of the gear that we have now is ever getting closer to that actual live concert experience, but it's still not there. And so I always kind of.
Do you think it could ever be there?
Not totally, maybe. I don't know. We're making great strides in speakers and electronics. We're creating great line conditioners and grounding devices that ever more lower the noise floor, so things are sounding more present and real and open and clear. But I feel like it'll never be the same, and maybe that's a good thing, because we should support the performing arts. I don't want to just listen to CDs and LPs, but I feel like there is some truth to trying to go for that absolute sound, trying to get closer to that, get the timbre of the instruments correct, get the pace, rhythm, and timing correct, get the soundstage working in your listening room. And when all that happens, it can kind of be a time machine when you listen to music. But maybe to answer your question, I suspect no. I think there'll still be some magic from being there in person at Disney Hall and hearing Dudamel or someone conducting an orchestra. But tell me about your favorite artist. What are you listening to now?
Well,
what really gets you going?
I mean, I like Beethoven, and I have the Fifth Symphony, and I have it basically with different conductors that have recorded it, and also one that was recorded with the instruments back in its day, which is kind of difficult to actually recreate those instruments, which sounds totally different in and of itself. That's another thing too. I mean, you're actually at the mercy of who did the recording, what kind of pickup equipment, what kind of microphones are they listening to? What was the source that they were basically laying down? Was it, obviously there's a tape machine that's basically got so many different tracks, and then how it's re-engineered, and then how digitally you can actually remaster tapes. All of this leads to, okay, great, just make a decision. It's going to get better as we go and know more about how to do that, and the equipment is better. So therefore, a recording today is, you would imagine, have to be way better than a recording that was done back in the 50s. But there are some, stampings of records that are just absolutely phenomenal, back in the 50s and the 60s. I mean,
and not just in classical and jazz. Yeah. Oh my God, there's so many amazing performances that we're getting these audiophile LP reissues that are just phenomenal from these 1958, and era recordings and 60s, and the Blue Notes that Joe Harley and Kevin Gray and others are doing are just phenomenal.
We were talking the other day, and I was saying, I have this Pride recording, I have the actual record, but I mean, you can just stream it, of Harry Belafonte at Carnegie Hall. He did the recording over 2 separate days.
Yep.
And then they combined, and he did the same performance twice. So they're obviously decided to pick what they thought was the best performance. I'm sure he had a lot to say about that. And I can tell what day the recording was, and I'll tell you why. Because on one of the days that he did the concert, there were a lot of people that had colds. And there was a lot of sneezing and coughing and rattling and wrestling. Now I have a sound system that actually can depict all of that information. And there's one scenario that every time, everybody's got a special bunch of passages that they listen to the AB equipment when they get to the house. One of them is the Jamaican Farewell that he sings, all in the first 30 seconds.
Yep.
and he's on a stool, and he moves on that stool, and actually goes, and actually you can see the floor, you can feel the floor creak.
Yeah.
Now, why is that important? The distinction and the clarity of that creaking, to me, is an identifying factor of how actually transparent my system actually is attempting to try to be.
Yeah.
And if it's more muffled, then I'm missing information.
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest discovery now, having had power cables, for an example, and I know I'm reverting back to a conversation about equipment, is that this new Clarius stuff with their power cables unmuffled my Macintosh equipment. It was though I had a blanket muffling my voice like this that I didn't realize I would be able to discover. So I sort of thought to myself, all this equipment by itself, in my example about 2 swimsuits can't swim,
Yeah.
the equipment you can't hear unless you connect it.
Yeah.
You connect it to speakers, you connect it to the power, you connect it between the components.
It's like a system.
Yeah, and to me, I really now feel that that may become almost 50% of the decision that has to be made. Not necessarily 50% of your budget, but that decision has the biggest impact of what you're going to get out of the hardware choices that
Yep.
you've made.